Hello everybody, and welcome to the extras of the Kingdom Hearts 2 playthrough. Now, as I said at the end of the actual playthrough, the purpose of this is mostly to go through Jiminy's journal and to show everything off, so your time here is to be able to read all of the secret Ansem reports for today. Now, you could do this on like websites or whatever, and there's probably no need for me to show this off, but I feel that I should. So if you want to read the secret Ansem reports, then just pause the video, stop my inane ramblings, and read. Because, I mean, there's a lot of very interesting stuff that goes on in here. Because it shows off kind of all the information about kind of Ansem the Wive's journey. And basically what happened to him, and also kind of allows you to see kind of the progression from kind of outed ruler of Radiant Gardens to insane madman, to realising what he's done. And it's really nice to kind of see that. Now, an interesting little fact is that in the Japanese versions of the games, the Ansem's reports are numbered 0 to 12 instead of 1 to 13. But basically, they changed it to 1 to... well, they changed it to 1 to 13 in English, although in the text here, basically it keeps the 0 to 12 thing, so that's why Ansem says, I only wrote Ansem's report 0, which was Ansem's report 1. There are kind of some inconsistencies that develop, because with the original Ansem reports, there's stuff in, like, because basically what Ansem states in these reports is that he only wrote the first one, and by that implication, Xehanort wrote numbers 2 to 13. One thing I will point out is that 11, 12 and 13 do not appear in the original Kingdom Hearts. They only appear in the final mix version. And you get them for beating Kurt Ziza in Agrabah, beating Sephiroth in the Olympus Coliseum, and defeating Unknown, which is Xemnas, at Holobastion. So, kind of, I think, from what I can gather, there's much more obvious that Xehanort wrote 10 to 13 than any of the others in the middle, but according to Ansem, that is the case. There is also a thing that in Report 12, which I can't remember which one that is, Xehanort mentions that he'll record more details of the Realm of Darkness in another report, but it has never appeared. The possibility is that it was going to be the original plan for the phrase Ansem's other report, which appears in another side, another story. But then it was changed to the secret Ansem reports. I mean, that's basically, I think, the general line of thinking of what happened. But there's also a further inconsistency when Ansem... well, when it's mentioned that Ansem's disciples are working with Xehanort to study the Heartless, because in the original report, they're never mentioned, and there's the implication that Xehanort was working completely alone. Now, my guess as to how they kind of logically got around the misunderstanding is that Xehanort could have arguably been working on some of it for a while, not including Ansem's other disciples. But then there is the issue of, at the end of Birth by Sleep, I mean, this is a spoiler if you've never played Birth by Sleep, but oh well. Basically, Xehanort ends up with Braig, which is Xigbar's original self, and kind of Braig seems to be guiding him. So it is odd that there's no mention of them working together. I mean, the obvious reason for that being the case is that at that point the organisation members didn't exist, because they hadn't come up with that idea yet. I mean, there's obviously thoughts that it was going to happen because you got Roxas in the secret ending, and the world that never was. But you never got kind of knowledge of the organisation members, because they weren't a thing, at least until Final Mix, although I can't remember whether Final Mix came out before or after Chain of Memories. So, there's that. Now, basically, you will get all of these reports throughout the course of the game. None of them will kind of pass you by, because they all go automatically into your journal. But basically, you get Secret Ansem's Report 1 after defeating the Thousand Heartless in the Battle of the Thousand Heartless. You get number 2 in Twilight Town in your first visit as Sora outside the train station after you see Mickey. You get the 3rd one in The World That Never Was after defeating Xigbar. You get the 4th one in Beast's Castle after defeating Zaldin. The 5th one in Olympus Coliseum after you beat Demyx for the first time. 6 in Port Royal after defeating the Grim Reaper. 7 in Hollow Bastion on your first visit after defeating the Nobodies Attacking the Gate. 8 in The World That Never Was after defeating Luxord. 9 in The World That Never Was after defeating Syax. 10 in Twilight Town on your final visit after you've gone through to the data copy of the town. 11 in The World That Never Was after Riku joins you. 12 in The World That Never Was after Saurus and Roxas had their fight. And 13 in The World That Never Was after defeating Xemnas' first form. So, you'll get all of them. It's not like the original where there's a slight awkwardness where there are 3. No, there's 4 that you get from Aerith if you talk to her in the Hollow Bastion library, but you may not necessarily speak to her, so you may not get them. And also, in Final Mix, there's the 3 secret bosses. Well, 3 of the 4... Well, 3 of the 5, actually. Because Phantom and Ice Titan aren't in this list. And I think it's because Kurtziza was created for the Western release of Kingdom Hearts, and then they added it back in for Final Mix, because Japan never got that boss fight. I think Sephiroth was always there, and then, although I might be wrong on that one, but they added Unknown, which is Xemnas, for the ultra secret boss fight of Kingdom Hearts 1, just like they added Lingering Sentiment to Kingdom Hearts 2. But I mean, I do love kind of when there's kind of background stuff to read, because it's all kind of really cool and interesting. I mean, there is the problem of things when they get insanely long, and frequently this sort of background stuff can just be ridiculous. And, I mean, I think prime example of that is like Final Fantasy XIII and Mass Effect, because all of their kind of codec things are like the stupidly longest things I have ever seen in my entire life. And it's just like, who the hell is going to have time to read all of that? At least with this stuff, it's not that long. Like, I mean, Ansem reports is like 15 minutes of reading. Which is really, really not bad. I mean, there's some slight worse stuff, because going through all the character files, that's going to take us quite a while. Because there's a lot of characters, but you get my gist. It's just not that bad. And I think there's a really interesting thing. Well, this stuff is really interesting because, as well as being backstory and all that jazz, it's got a slightly philosophical style of writing. I mean, it helps that it's using, like, the combination of these two theoretically unlikely exceptions may be behind this anomaly. It's a very kind of scientific language. But also, just in general, I'm not quite sure how to explain it, but it's very philosophical in its tone, and I think that's odd in popular video games. Like, philosophy is a very, very odd area to start kind of going into. Mostly because people don't care about that stuff. But then there's elements of it here, and I think it might just be because of the whole interest in the heart as being the soul, and the body being a separate thing. And I mean, that as an idea goes back a very, very long way in history. Like, I'm pretty 100% sure, well, pretty 90-ish % sure, that in the Renaissance period, so 17th century-ish, well, 16th, 17th century, there was the belief that the heart was kind of what controlled the body. And by that I mean that kind of like feelings and humours, which I'd go into an explanation of what a humour is, but no, it's basically mood. That it was the heart that controlled that. The brain wasn't really they didn't really think about the brain that much. I mean, it's around then that they kind of started to shift perspectives, so the brain became what controlled the body, but there was a period where it was the heart. And in a way, sort of, the heart became the soul, and contained the soul almost, I think. So it's a very old idea, and I think from a kind of, even just the way we phrase things, it kind of now, there's still a lot of stuff to do with the heart and feeling, because like with love, it's like I gave you my heart. There's that whole imagery, and also I'll keep you in my heart. And while the heart technically is just an organ, it's still got that very important meaning that we still attach to it, which I just find really awesome. But Secret Ansem's reports are done, so let's move on.